Anyway, my name is Molina, immigration attorney, and today I have the great pleasure and joy of sharing very relevant, important information. And I can tell you that the long national nightmare in the immigration law world is over. We've been waiting for about 4 years to say that, and we can finally say it. Now, this doesn't mean that the fight is over, that we can just, watch TV and let things happen. No, but it does mean that we have some hope, okay? There's a long road ahead, and there's a lot of work to do. As a matter of fact, the harder part is yet to come. But today I have a lot of information to share, all of it good. So, so to not lose more time, I'm going to go ahead and share the presentation. Just give me 1 second here. Share. Oh. Okay, so as promised, the topic today will be the executive orders and comprehensive immigration reform, so known as a U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021. We have a lot of ground to cover. First thing we're going to talk about is the Muslim ban. Then we're going to talk about the change in immigration enforcement priorities. We're also going to talk about the wall, the Deferred Liberians and Venezuelans, DACA, the end of the zero tolerance policy, COVID travel restrictions, and comprehensive immigration reform. Okay, so if we remember, one of the first things that the previous administration did was announce a ban from immigrating from any Muslim and many African countries, just for the fact that they're Muslim majority countries. Now, the previous administration tried to mask their intentions by saying that it was a matter of national security. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court agreed with them, and since 2017, we have thousands of immigrant families that have been separated because of the travel ban. Well, they will not be separated any longer because of the travel ban. The State Department was directed to develop a plan to reconsider visa denials. So in many cases, people were just denied because of the ban. So some were applying for waivers, others just gave up. But now the instruction is to resume processing of these cases and to reconsider visa denials that were issued under the ban. Importantly, the State Department will continue to apply immigration laws and COVID-19 related restrictions. So that hasn't really changed, but the ban is no longer in effect. So that's the first good news. All right, second good piece of news is the change in enforcement policies and priorities. Now, this reflects, frankly, a complete change in the enforcement of immigration law in the United States. It also shows that the current administration takes the needs of American families and American communities seriously. And to highlight this, I would like to read to you an extract from this executive order, and it's relating to the policy. So President Joe Biden says that the policy in the United States is to recognize the following. Immigrants have helped strengthen America's families, communities, businesses, and workforce and economy, infusing the United States with creativity, energy, and ingenuity. So this is a welcome marked change from the previous administration. We went from being made into the villains to being recognized as integral parts of the United States society. Having said that, the administration is focused and centered in protecting the country and making sure that we have a secure border and addressing humanitarian challenges at the southern border. So, with that in mind, there's a new group of priorities for law enforcement. So first are those people that entered the United States on November 1st or 2020 or after. People who are suspected of terrorism or espionage or that are considered a danger to national security. And people who have voluntarily signed their deportation orders after being advised by counsel. And finally, people that the ICE director determines that must be deported by law. However, this change in policy and priorities is welcome. If we remember, just a few weeks ago, the policy of the United States government was to try to deport anyone that was in the United States without any immigration status, regardless of their story, regardless of their criminal record. It was just a free-for-all. Anyone that falls within that category of undocumented individual was fair game. Now, thanks to this change in policy, that's no longer the case. There's another very important piece of information here, and it's the end of the no tolerance policy. Now, that policy was a policy that made possible the separation of hundreds of children from their parents at the border. That's no longer the case. We have gone back to what I consider normal and logical and reasonable policies. It's not just a matter of whether you've committed a crime or whether there's enough evidence to show that someone committed a crime, but we need to consider other things. Who are we affecting, and what would be the repercussions of these actions? So we're going back with that. So thankfully, we have ended the zero tolerance policy. Another piece of information. So no more funding for the wall. Now, the wall in itself was a harebrained policy that was done as a pet project, as a vanity project for the previous president. But it also served as a symbol of unreasonable policies aimed to deter immigration to this country. So, we're not wasting our taxpayer money in useless walls. So, that's a very welcome and that's a very welcome change. In relation to that, we've also ended the enrollment in the migrant protection protocols. This was the program designed to keep asylum seekers waiting in Mexico. So that's no longer being implemented. However, we don't know still how they're going to handle this case, these cases that are waiting in Mexico. We were expecting an announcement today from the White House, but they postponed that until either February 1st and February 2nd. I'll give you more information about that at the end. But in the coming days, they're going to announce what measures they're going to take on MPP. Okay, another welcome news is the extension of deferred and forced departures for Liberians. DD is pretty much like temporary protected status with some slight differences. The important piece of information is that it has been extended through June 30th, 2022. People on this program are allowed to have work authorization documents and it has been published in the Federal Registry, which is required by law for it to become effective. So with that, we also know that there's some exceptions to the program. So any individual convicted of a felony or 2 misdemeanors, or that are barred from receiving asylum. So people who are barred from receiving asylums are people who have committed very serious crimes, aggravated felonies, things of that nature, or have committed persecution, among other actions. 2, if a person applied for a green card through a program designed especially for Liberians, and they were denied, they will not qualify for DED. Also, individuals that pose a threat to the national security, or individuals who return to Liberia and remain there for over 180 days, or individuals who have been deported or removed, or people who are subject to extradition. Now, this DED for Liberians is also helpful in determining how the DED program would be applied for other countries. So these restrictions seem pretty reasonable, and very likely will be the restrictions also applied for DED for Venezuelans. More on Venezuela in the coming slides. DACA. So over here, I'm very proud and happy to see that one of the first executive orders that President Biden published was relating to DACA. And in essence, the president wants the Secretary of Homeland Security to fortify and preserve DACA. Now, what does that mean precisely? We don't know. We need to see. But, one can think that what we're trying to do is either create regulations that will protect it or make it harder for DACA to be disbanded, or for another administration to try and disband it like the previous one tried to. Also, it means that they recognize that DACA must be protected. So this gives us hope that now we're seriously talking about passing a law that protects dreamers. As of today, importantly, Immigration Services is still accepting first-time requests for DACA, as well as DACA renewals. We've been filing DACA, initial DACAs and renewals since November, when we actually late November, early December, when they announced a change in policy, and we started encouraging people to apply for this. And we haven't seen these cases being denied or turned away or just summarily dismissed by CIS, which is a good sign. We also know that deferred action and employment authorization is being extended for 2 years, rather than the 1 year that the Trump administration was issuing the work permits for. And then we also know that Immigration Services is also accepting applications for advanced parole. Now, advanced parole is a permission you ask Immigration Services to issue you before you travel outside the United States with DACA. On this, I think it's too soon, and then the change in administration hasn't really taken root through the entire government. So we might find an issue with CBP when you're trying to come back to the United States. So our advice for now is that even if you have advanced parole, don't travel. Let's wait a little longer, see how they're implementing these policies. Let's make sure that we have a uniform policy throughout the United States. And then, if necessary, we can travel. All right. But again, I mean, each case is different. If there's an emergency, consult with a qualified attorney before you decide to travel. All right, talking about travel. We have new restrictions related to COVID. So first, and this was just, it's unbelievable that we didn't have anything like this before, but now finally it's a requirement to wear a mask in domestic flights. Regrettably, we've seen many cases where passengers refuse to wear a mask, and then the flight attendant or the crew are arguing with a with a passenger to wear a mask, right? So that's regrettable now. There's a order from the president that we all need to wear a mask. Domestic flights. Also, a negative COVID-19 test is required to enter the United States, and this applies to everyone. Okay, so if you were abroad, if you're a citizen, lawful resident, you're immigrating to the United States for the first time, or you're visiting, you need a negative COVID-19 test. And again, these are, common sense policies that should have been adopted many months ago. And then finally, we also have a let's call it a self-isolation request. It's a voluntary request, but the United States government is asking travelers to isolate themselves for 10 years. This is done on the honor system, all right? So they haven't announced like a big law enforcement task force to make sure that everyone's isolating themselves, but it's a way of asking each individual to do their part, right? Let's be responsible. We're members of the community, of society. Our actions affect others, so that's why it's done on the honor system. So 10 days, let's do our part. Now, DED for Venezuelans. This is what I was referring to when I was talking about Liberia. Importantly here, it was announced during the last day of the Trump administration, January 19th, 2021. And it's extended through July 19th, 2022. However, it was only announced. Under the law, there must be a publication in the Federal Registry, which hasn't happened. So we don't know how the program will be implemented, or if there's any changes coming or anything like that. We do know that there's a few limitations, just as the way as the announcement is written. At first, felonies, misdemeanors, and asylum bar. Aside from that, we anticipate other reasonable limitations on this group, but we don't know yet. And one of the recurring themes that you're going to keep hearing from me and my team and others in the immigration law world is to be patient. These things are coming, the announcements will come, but right now we need to be patient. Okay, so having said that, I think that the DED program for Liberians provides a good roadmap for what we can expect for Venezuela. All right, well, that covers most of the executive orders that were published in recent weeks by President Biden. Now we need to talk about the proposed legislation, and this is something that makes me very excited and proud of the current administration. That only the first day they introduce legislation in Congress. So. However, before we delve into those topics and details, please be aware that our advice and our information that we're providing right now is based as of information we received today, January 29th, 2021. It is subject to change, and should it be changed or modified or something like that, we would let you know. All right, but it's only limited to today. Very likely this will change or be done differently, but as of today, this is good information. So that's the first thing. Second, please know that there hasn't been any immigration law bill enacted by Congress. There's no new pathways to citizenship or legalization or anything yet. What we know is based on what certain Congress members and the White House have announced to the public, right? But we haven't even seen the text of the law yet. So we just need, again, we need to be patient. We need to wait and see what's in it and what passes. But again, it's a great sign. So on day one, the Biden administration introduced a sweeping, broad legislation, something that we haven't seen in about 30 years in the United States. And one of the first things that it does is that it allows undocumented individuals to apply for temporary legal status and then after a waiting period of about 5 years, they'll be able to apply for their green cards for lawful residency. As long as a person can pass a national security background and criminal background checks and pay their taxes. Now, this proposal is awfully similar to what happened in the 1980s with the legalization program under President Reagan. So, in that program, millions of people were able to legalize their immigration situation. Importantly, and again, if you're just going to remember for a few things from this presentation, that is, if you qualify for legalization for any bill in the future, you should apply for it. You should not wait for something better in the future. You should not wait to see what happens. Apply as soon as you know you're eligible for it. Why? Because now we're still seeing people that would have been able to fix their status back in the 80s, and 30 years later, they're still undocumented, and I asked them, well, why didn't you? It's like, well, I didn't have the money, I wasn't interested, I thought something better would come out, I wasn't sure about what was going on, or frankly, I didn't care at the time. Now, 30 years later, they have children, family, a bunch of things, and then, it's a lot harder. So if you qualify for something, make sure you apply for it. All right, another nice piece of information here is that the program distinguishes Dreamers, TPS holders, and immigrant farm workers as a distinct class of individuals that merit a quicker path to lawful residency. So Dreamers, CPS holders, and immigrant farm workers would be eligible for, to apply for green cards as soon as the law passes. After 3 years, you will also be eligible to apply for citizenship, as long as they can pass a background check and demonstrate knowledge of English and U.S. civics. So, again, very similar to the to some aspects of the Reagan legalization programs. Importantly, and this is something that was long overdue, the bill is proposed to use to clear the family-based immigration system. So one of the goals is to clear the backlogs. Currently we have people from many countries waiting 20, 30 years for their immigrant visas to become current. And the way that it does it is that first it's trying to redefine who is an immediate relative. So the immediate relative category, which allows a person to have an immigrant visa immediately available to them, is being expanded to include the spouses and children of lawful permanent residents. Well, that's a big change. Then the other thing is that any unused visa, so every year there's almost 1 million visas that are approved but not really used, or they just are wasted. So they can't be recycled. They're just out for that year. Now we're going to be able to recycle those unused visas, which will help a lot to alleviate the backlogs. Importantly, they've also announced the end of the 3 and 10 year bars. So let me explain how these work. So if you're in the United States without any immigration status for more than 6 months, and you depart the United States, you're prohibited from re-entering for 3 years. Now, if you're in the United States without any immigration status for over 1 year, and then you depart the United States, you are prohibited from re-entering the United States for 10 years. There's waivers available for this, but not everyone qualifies for a waiver. So getting rid of this 3 and 10 year bar would ensure that families can be together. Importantly, they're also increasing the diversity visas from 55,000 visas a year to 80,000 a year. So that's a welcome news as well. Now, in the employment-based visa backlogs, like similar to the family-based context, they're proposing to recapture unused visas, which is a great benefit. But even more so than in the family-based immigration context, the per capita quota limitations was wreaking havoc in the entire system. So you had people mostly from India, but also some from China, that were being discriminated against because of the per quota um, limitations, right, per country. So they're eliminating those. Um, that should, allow many employment-based immigrants to be able to, finally come to the United States and not wait 10 years for the immigrant visa to become current. Importantly, the bill also seeks to crack down on criminal organizations and really, going after the culprits of, of criminality and stuff like that, instead of going to innocent bystanders. Um, Interestingly, the bill also proposes to address the root causes of immigration by helping out countries in Central America, mostly Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Um, and within that project, they also proposed creating regional processing centers throughout the region. So this is to avoid people coming in caravans to the United States, or taking perilous journey through La Bestia, through Mexico, or other methods. Which again, this is welcome news, because we're finally have an administration that's really thinking about this program or problem completely, and really assessing and understanding what the root problem is. And then, interesting for me at least, also the bill seeks to improve the immigration court system by expanding family case management programs. So currently there's over 1 million cases pending in the immigration court system. We have, I would say, approximately maybe 30% of people seeking something called cancellation of removal. And just so you know, to give you to highlight this problem, there's only 4,000 visas available a year for people seeking cancellation of removal for non-lawful residents. And there's approximately, I would say, 30% of 1 million, about 300,000, I estimate, are seeking cancellation of removal. So there's less than 0.1% of visas available for that huge number of people applying for that benefit. So opening the opportunities for relief in immigration court will help the backlog tremendously. And also using technology for the immigration courts. Frankly, it's embarrassing that it's 2021 and we're still sending our filings by mail in paper. So hopefully we can start using technology to have a more efficient immigration court system. Another important change is the elimination of the 1-year filing deadline for asylum. Currently, if a person wants to seek asylum, they have 1 year from the date that they enter the United States to file the application. Otherwise, they're barred. They're not allowed to apply for asylum. So they're proposing to get rid of that rule, which actually creates a lot of negative, or it has a lot of negative effects in many, but particularly in children. And then finally, again, similar to the cancellation or removal context of the immigration court, U visas available. So currently there's about 10,000 U visas available a year in the entire United States. There is over 140,000 people that have filed applications and cases pending for U visas currently. So the wait time is approximately 14 years right now for U visas. So if we increase it from 10,000 to 30,000, that hopefully helps us to reduce the backlog significantly. Okay, folks, so that concludes the presentation. Now we're going to open it up for questions. Now, if you have any questions, you can use the chat. You can raise your hand if you would like to, say it out loud. Or, if you don't have the time to ask me a question right now, you can do so using, you can do so by email, right? So my email is jm@jmolinalawfirm.com. All right, well, let's see if we have any questions right now. All right, so we don't have any questions right now, but I told you I was going to give you some some information about announcements to come. Like I said, the Biden administration was supposed to give some announcements about immigration matters today. They announced today that they were going to postpone that until February 1st or 2nd. But they told us that the announcements were relating to asylum seekers. So I think that they're very, very likely they're going to talk about the MPP program in at the southern border and how they're going to manage and try and fix that issue. They're also going to announce the root causes of migration in Central America. So again, what we're talking about, the regional processing centers and addressing the root cause. There's an announcement coming. Importantly, they're going to announce a family reunification task force. So,
Hey, George, I have a question for you.
all right, Hamza, just give me 1 second. Let me
Okay, cool.
finish. Let me finish this, and I'll give you the floor. But yeah, so one of the most regrettable chapters in recent U.S. history was the separation of children from their parents. There are about 600 children that have not been able to be reunited with their parents, and which is just sad and pathetic in so many ways. So they're announcing a task force to address that issue. Also, new policies on refugee resettlement, and importantly, regarding legal immigration, they're going to make an announcement on public charge and naturalization applications. Regarding the public charge, let's see if they keep the rule and they modify the regulations, or they get rid of the regulations and go back to it the way it was before, or they're going to do something new. So we need to wait and see what happens, but I anticipate all of this is going to be good news. Hamza, I'm very sorry I cut you off, but I'm all ears.
Hey, George. First of all, how you doing? I have a question for you. It was the F visas. So we haven't speak about the F visas, right? Like my little sister case, I'm trying to reach out. What's the new process for her? Or when can we, you know, like
Okay, so
when do we have something new for?
I gotcha. Okay, um, so I'm thinking that you're talking about immigrant visas. The issue right now that we're facing with many immigrant visas is that many embassies and consulates remain closed. However, that is changing, and that is changing fast. And one of the things that we need to do is just reach out to the U.S. embassies and consulates and just say, hey, what's going on here? All right, so we need to pressure them. But the issue in many of the family-based immigration cases is that the embassies and consulates are not open, and they have delayed processing times. However, the bans from entering the United States because of COVID, all that is gone. So right now, in cases where we have a valid immigrant visa and we're just waiting for people to come, right now we're waiting on the embassies and consulates to reopen and to issue the interview dates. It's just a matter of time. But excellent question, because it leads to the other part, and it's, we need to pressure the consulate. So Hamza, I'm gonna call you later, and talk to you about the plans for that. But excellent question. Now, if you're referring to an F visa for students. They're, what they have announced is that they're going to make it easier for F1 students to apply for work visas within the United States. So they don't need to leave the U.S. after they get an advanced degree in the country. But very good question. All right, folks. Anything else? All right. So we went over our usual time. Usually we try and keep these under 20 minutes. You're busy. You don't want to hear someone talk for over 20 minutes or 30 minutes. But today's subject was very important. So, okay, so we have one more. Okay, I'm sorry, I missed this one. Okay, so very good question. So it says, when do you think we will have more concrete news regarding DACA and the possibility of becoming a citizen? Excellent question. Okay, so we don't really control what Congress does. And this is based on information that we have today. All right, so we know that there's several things pending in Congress right now that's going to take all the oxygen out of the room for the coming weeks. So we have the impeachment trial of the former president, and then we also have a bunch of head of agencies and departments that must be confirmed by the Senate. But the Senate is going to be fully entertaining the impeachment trial for the, coming at least 2-3 weeks. So all of February is going to be gone. Then they need to finish confirming a lot of these people I mentioned. So that's going to take a while. I don't anticipate really the possibility of passage and really talking about concrete benefits or introducing the legislation in Congress until at least March. I mean, if they do before, excellent. It'll be a nice surprise to me. But again, I would be surprised. Yes. Okay, we have one more question from Mr. No5.
George, I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
So the one more question is, they say the presidential proclamation has been extended through March 31, 2021. That's correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so do I go ahead and just keep like calling the embassy here in Jordan and just or just wait until March the 31? That was my question.
Yes, I'm going to call you with more information, but relating to this, again, it's administrative problems that we're seeing that's delaying cases that have been approved, and we're just waiting for interviews. Before it was a ban, right? No one can come in here because of COVID, whatever. But right now the ban's gone. We're going to see that right now the consulates and embassies remain closed in many countries.
Okay, so just keep making.
I'm gonna call you. I'm gonna call you.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
So we can. I want to protect your privacy and your information. So.
I understand. Yeah. So there's no more. They wouldn't delay. What do you think they would delay it more than March 31?
The national emergency declaration and stuff. That was one of the first executive orders that was issued by President Biden that ended that blanket, ban on anyone coming to the United States.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's gone.
Okay. Cool. Well, much appreciated. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome, and great question. Thank you.
Have a good day.
All right, folks. All right. Well, thank you everyone for being present in the this webinar. We hope to have several others in the coming weeks to keep you updated and let you know what's going on. All right. Again, I'm Molina. Have a great day.